Good morning and welcome to our UBAL Insight session on the face of local, how new local data will inform your future digital marketing strategy. My name is Katharina Löscher. I'm a digital campaign manager here at UBAL, and we're really lucky to have the perfect person with us leading the session today, my colleague Philipp Wolf, who's a senior content marketing manager here at UBAL. Welcome, Philipp. How are you today?
Hi, thanks for having me. Yes, I'm doing great. Very excited about this webinar today.
Awesome. Yeah, likewise. So before we actually start with Philipp and jump right into the session, I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. So everyone that currently enters this call is muted. But of course, you can ask questions anytime with your GoToWebinar panel. Just go to the question section and drop in any questions you may have or comments for us. We will, of course, try to answer these questions during this presentation. On top of that, we also have a short hint for you that after the session closes, so after this webinar is over, we have a short survey popping up, and we would be really happy if you could help us and give us some feedback after this webinar ends. Thanks in advance for doing this. So, and I see that more and more people are actually joining the session. So good morning, everyone, or to everyone that just joined. We are going to be talking about the face of local today, and in specific, we will be covering the findings of our newest report. So one essential piece of this webinar will be around the local customer journey. So some of you may ask, so what does UBAL have to do with the local customer journey? And who is UBAL actually? So we are a company that empowers the world's biggest brands that have hundreds or thousands of locations, like KFC, BP, also the Heathrow Airport, and many others, to create a memorable near-me customer journey. Or if you want so, local near-me customer journey. So our goal is, with the UBAL platform, to make sure, and you see that actually in this little slide right here, that we are covering all the online interactions until the offline sales within the customer journey. Our goal is, in the end, to really make sure that the consumer has a seamless and positive experience. And you may think, okay, that sounds a bit theoretical. How does it look in practice? So I brought a little example from my recent work trip, actually, to Brighton. And I don't know that place really well, but what I usually do is I go for lunch and check out new places. So what I do is I take out my phone, check Google Maps, and look for places near me. So it doesn't matter in that sense if it's a local burger shop or if it's maybe a KFC around. I really do care about the fact that it's, first of all, open, it looks good, and if it has a 4-star review, as you see in the second point, like you, I go to this burger place in Brighton and check it out. I hope, of course, that I have a tasty burger in the end and an overall great experience. So if that was a great experience for me in the end, which most of the time is, and Brighton is a great place to be at, I usually recommend my burger place to other people, maybe to, my colleagues, my friends, but also if I come back, I remember that this might be a place to come back. Obviously, sometimes it can be that I didn't have a pleasant experience in the end, and then I might leave a review on social media or on Google My Business, and then obviously I also expect the business owner to answer, to my review. And this in the end creates for me the feeling that I might even come back and become a loyal customer if I visit Brighton the next time. So that was the customer journey in a nutshell. Of course, in other industries like the service industry, this local customer journey might be a bit more complex, but in the end, this is how the local customer journey looks like. And I'm really excited that Philipp is here today because he will be tackling that within the next 45 minutes. And now I'm wondering, Philipp, what is actually your favorite near me search? And maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then the stage is yours. Thank you so much and enjoy.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction, Katharina. Yeah, I'm in the content and research team at Overall, and I use local search a lot actually. And next week, I'm on holidays and I'm going to do a bike trip, so it's going to be really important for me to check out, to find restaurants in those neighborhoods that I've never been to, and this is something where local search comes in quite handy, because you're in a different city, you're in a different place, you don't know where a burger place is, you know, and I'm picky, you know, I want to have a vegetarian burger place. So it's quite helpful for me to just search for a vegetarian burger near me on Google Maps, for example. You know, and the reason why we did this report here, or this new phase of local, is because we are quite enthusiastic about local and the local experience. And we also know that the pandemic, you know, yeah, made it a little more difficult. So, you know, usually I wouldn't consume too much online. But then, you know, during the pandemic, this was kind of the only way to get what I needed. And, you know, one of those very frequent NIMI searches that I do are quite food related. So, you know, if it's about pizza, burgers, very important breakfast restaurants, I'm all in. If you want to get in touch with me, if you have any questions regarding this report that you don't dare ask in this webinar, you know, feel free to get in touch via LinkedIn. But, you know, I totally encourage you to ask your questions here on this session, and I'm more than happy to ask that if I can. So what are we doing today? The agenda we have is I'm going to present you some very interesting findings from the new report that we have been creating and that are pretty relevant for your marketing strategy. We're not doing this without, you know, giving you some best practices that we got from other experts. And finally, we're going to have a Q&A round where we can address your questions, you know, talk about the report or whatever comes to your mind. So why the new face of local? We know that the pandemic did something with economy last year and still up until today, right? So we noted that there was a change with the local experience. And before we actually start, I would like you to answer one of our questions, which is, with the pandemic, did local, like in your perspective, did local become more important, less important, or did it just stay as important as it was before? And Katharina is going to launch this poll now. Yes, thank you, Katharina. And I think you've got like a couple of seconds time for this. Katharina, in the meantime, you know, what's your hunch? What do you think?
For me personally, I really can just say it became more important. I really have a good example for that. I'm looking for a coffee machine, I think, since a year now, and I have really compared a lot of reviews online, but I didn't dare to purchase the coffee machine offline. And then when I was able to actually go back to the store, I just recently purchased my new coffee machine. So definitely for me, more important.
Yeah, I had different experience actually, because I'm, you know, as I just mentioned, I'm not super crazy about e-commerce or buying stuff online, because I always want to have this experience of seeing what I'm going to buy and you know, knowing what it's going to be like. So I thought, you know what, if this is going to stay, local would be quite yeah, local will still be relevant, but maybe it's going to be substituted by e-commerce. That's something I wondered. But in the end, I personally think, you know, it's going to be just as important as before. And I mean, knowing the results from the report, I would say, yeah, it's just as important as before, but different.
Yeah,
so,
I think I agree, but let's look what the audience thinks, and
yes,
I'm actually really curious. Wow.
More important. Wow, that's surprising. That's surprising. I assume that people would that the majority would say just as important as before. Interesting to see that you see that local is going to be more important. So this should be something we discuss in the aftermath of this webinar today. Let me come back to why the new face of local, right? So with the pandemic, when the pandemic started, you know, everybody could see that there's a pretty much a boost for e-commerce. People consume more stuff online. At the same time, we could also see that there was like this movement of people, you know, supporting the locals, their neighborhoods. They were scared that they would, you know, that they would have to close for good or for bad. So, you know, there's like two movements, e-commerce and support your locals at the same time. And we wanted, what can you make out of this? You know, how does it make sense? And we wanted to find out more. So we actually gathered a lot of different data sets. We did a consumer survey in which we asked 4,000 consumers worldwide. So it's in the US, in the UK, in France, and in Germany. We also had a look at the very exclusive data that we can gather from the overall database. But we also spoke to a lot of different marketing experts from our customers and partners to get their insights and their best practices on this field. It's quite a lot. It's quite a data shower, I would say. But you know what? Let's check it out step by step. And I'm going to present you the most critical findings here. There's the link to the report later on if you want to find out more. We're going to share this. But let's start with the consumer survey. So we wanted to know from consumers what is their preferred way to shop. So we offered them answers like, you know, I research online and buy something in a store. I see something in a store, but I buy it online. I research an item online, but buy it in a store, and also, you know, buy something online, but pick it up in store, which is click and collect nowadays. And interestingly, it's only 17% of consumers who really prefer to research and buy products only online. The rest, 74%, are no exclusive online only consumers. So they have a local experience at one point of their journey or the other. And this is even confirmed with the next question that we asked them. You know, are you more likely to buy something online if you can return it to a store? And 60% would agree, which is like already the majority. But you know, considering that 16% are not even sure, that adds a lot. So that here we can see that the store, the local experience, has become a very critical, is still a very critical asset, but it coexists somehow with online, with e-commerce. So we wanted to know from consumers which would best describe their current shopping behavior. And here we could see that a majority of, hold on, sorry, no, 30%. So if we take those 10 and 20 here, we see that it's those people are quite agnostic. Actually, they would make the decision based on the quality or the price of what they want to get. The rest, 70%, they told us that they usually want to shop locally, and 37% of those people would even do so when it's more expensive or less convenient. So here again, we can see that there's no clear-cut boundary between online or offline. So consumers are moving in those two worlds at the same time. And in the future, they will continue to do so, but still with a strong preference for the local experience. So because we asked them, you know, how do you plan to go shopping after COVID? And indeed, the majority, like 82%, is in favor of a local shopping experience in some way. A third, again, will base the decision on price, availability, and convenience. What all of those assumably have in common, though, is that they have an online touchpoint at one point or the other. And usually this begins with the idea, oh, I want to have something, I want to find something. So they turn to their phones, just as Katharina did in Brighton, right? I need a restaurant to find, to go to lunch, to have lunch at. So I'm going to turn to my phone. And we wanted to know from those consumers, you know, which of these online platforms do you usually use? And it's not really a surprise that 77% would say, you know, I use Google. However, Google is one of the most important directory, you know, for business to be on, because consumers consume Google a lot. However, there are different directories that they would use in addition. So, for example, I find a restaurant, a pizza place, you know, next week on my bike tour when I'm on holidays, and I might find it on Google, but I want to find out more about this. So I might turn to TripAdvisor to, you know, to see how the other people rate it. So it's important to keep this in mind, you know, that consumers don't only turn to Google, they are on multiple places in this world. Google, however, is one very important thing for us, because we get a lot of insights here on their data, on performance data. So this is what we did in this report as well. We had a look at the performance data for local businesses on Google. And here we focused on those values that are very close to the actual conversion. So we had a look on the clicks on directions. So people find a place and they say, you know, Google, navigate me to this place, or they click on the website, or they make a phone call. So in the following, I'm going to show you some very, very interesting findings from this analysis. I want you to note, though, that all the values we are going to present here are averages for one GMB profile, Google My Business profile, out of that specific data set. So before we get to those conversion clicks, right, let's have a look first at the queries. So we can see, like in 2019 versus 2020, people searched more locally. So that increased actually. So consumers use local search more, even in the pandemic in 2020. Interestingly though, they use more indirect queries. So they search for a coffee place near me instead of bring me to Starbucks, right? So this has grown, but also we can see that the actions, despite the pandemic, grew. So we have 11% more local engagements per listing. So what used to be 313 clicks on a Google My Business listing became 349 on average. This is a global value. We're going to have a look at the country-specific values later on, but it's very important to note it's 11% more conversions on Google My Business listings, and more interestingly, even it's 35% more interactions that are not driving directions. So people turn more to website clicks and phone calls. You can see this quite well here. I mean, hopefully, because the contrast isn't that great, but you can see here that driving directions became less while website clicks and phone calls became more. On a international perspective, we can see here the yellow line represents the global average, and especially for the UK, this is super interesting, I think, because the UK has been beyond average, beyond the global average, but also very extreme in the way how people stopped using local interactions when the pandemic started, but then we had this great relapse during the summer. So this is something I want you to know, that people still use local search and interact locally with a business. And also what we can see here in the first quarter of this year already, the lines are going up. So it's kind of a decent promise we're not making, but we can read here that people are going to interact more with local businesses in the future. We provided this presentation here. We created this presentation before all the rumors started about the Delta version of that virus, but let's say positive a little. So while we have a look on these data here, as the sum of all interactions, we can have a closer look at the UK values in terms of website clicks, phone calls, and driving directions. And here we can see, it grew in UK. It grew a lot. We have 42% growth on local engagements in the UK for UK businesses, and the biggest share of those clicks go to websites. Interestingly, though, in contrast to the global values, we can even see here that the driving directions are partially above the year 2019. So this is quite good for the UK. So, but how does this translate to different industries? Because you might assume, people engage more often with a restaurant than with with a bank, for example. So we had a closer look at the different verticals. I need to say, though, this is global data, so it's not UK specific. This is global data that we took. So we could see here that there's kind of a rule of thumb, maybe, that those businesses could grow in the last year when they were able to digitalize their offering. For example, finance businesses, did online appointments all of a sudden, or they did more online appointments. Retailers offered click and collect. They had their e-commerce. And also, businesses and services, which is B2B businesses and services, they used more online appointments as well, presumably. So we can see this by the increase of website clicks and phone calls that happened here. Quite interestingly, the driving directions didn't decrease that much. This happened, however, for other industries, and this is especially those industries that weren't able to digitalize for offerings. So, we call them here the fun industries because they are like social and entertainment, they're about travel, and they're about food. And those industries had quite difficulties to digitalize their offerings or to compete with those existing offerings that are already there. For example, social entertainment, which refers to theaters, operas, cinemas. How are they supposed to compete with something like Netflix? Some did, some tried, but not as successfully, of course, as as they wanted. We can also see here that those industries in 2019, they got a lot of local engagements. For example, 592 for the social entertainment industry. This is really a lot compared to other industries. If we go back to the finance, for example, we've got 100 or 110 in 2020. So those industries will have a better time as soon as the restrictions are being loosened and people will go back to their local experiences, which is something that we of course hope, but also which is something that we assume, based on all the interviews that we did with other experts. So this is a lot of data actually, and let me summarize this a little for you. We can see that, usually we thought in categories like online versus offline, but nowadays we have to admit we live in a pretty much hybrid world. And as marketers, we can't ignore this. We can't think about those categories as, separate strategies. We need to see this as a whole. And at the same time, we need to make it about the consumer, the customer, and who have become quite hybrid over the last couple of months and years. So those consumers, they would first check their digital devices to get information, right? So they're kind of a digital first generation. Also, they have more options at hand on how to engage with their business. They have click and collect. They can buy something online and return it to a store, or they visit virtual events, just like we do here, right? And then it's about their convenience. Businesses need to offer them, what's most convenient to them when they are ready to buy. In the end, they have a preference though, which is for the real interaction, if it's available. But keep in mind, they have a choice now. So they're going to pick what's best for them at that particular point in time when they are ready to engage. So we would say the future of local is pretty hybrid. This is also why we call it the new face of local. And it's also all about the consumer. And the really important question for businesses is today, how can you embrace this? So what we did, we spoke to a lot of, to various experts from, agencies and some of our customers. So we spoke, for example, to Eva Jurkowitz from a learning institution in Germany. We spoke to Thalia, which is a very, the biggest bookstore in Germany. We spoke to one of our partners, SmartTraffik, but also you might be familiar with Moss and SOCi, who we spoke to as well. And I want to start this third part, the best practice part of this webinar, with a quote from Eva, from this learning institution. And she pretty much brought it to the point when she said, it's incredibly important to be set up well digitally. And that was already the case before. So this is nothing new, but it's more important today now, and it won't go away. And she thinks in the future, it will be more about meeting each individual person in their world. So it could be like the grandmother who would be used to more analog formats, a brochure, for example, that she would find in the business location. And we have the 35-year-old mother who searches on Instagram or Facebook on her phone. And it's crucial to tie all that together. So in the following, I want to share 5 best practices with you, how you can do that. And the first one is that you need to expand your channels. So you need to offer your product with less dependency on the actual local store. This doesn't mean that you should get rid of the local store, quite contrary, but you need to expand it. So businesses, what businesses did was, using e-commerce, offer virtual meetings, online forms, digital content, but also delivery services to expand their channels. Ask yourself, How can you broaden your offering in a meaningful way, meaningful, for the consumer? On which channels do you expect to meet your customers? And how can you sync all those efforts? The other recommendation is to make it all about your consumers. Think about your customers, because new digital forms of commerce are not solely an interim response to the pandemic. They are here to stay and to coexist with the local commerce. So future consumers, they will base their purchasing decision on what they find to be convenient at this very point they're ready to buy or engage with you. The question is, how can you make the conversion path as attractive as possible for your customers? And this should lead to a memorable experience. So how can you establish this? Stay up to date is the third recommendation that we have. Consumers turn to their phones whenever they need something, want to buy something, and they rely on your online presence as a source of information. So when accuracy and consistency in real time are the key to build trust for them and also to create a seamless experience, think about the variety of mediums or channels that people use, right? So I might search on Google Maps for a restaurant or a retail store. And if I compare this result to TripAdvisor, for example, and the opening hours are different, I might not have a good experience. I might go to somebody that I deem more trustful and reliable. So the task is to frequently check and update your business information, which is not only, but among others, opening hours, your images, your offerings, maybe also news, right? And the thing is, you need to do this for all of your locations on all online directories. So, if you're a business with multiple locations, this is going to be quite a challenge, but it's doable. You need the right tools, right? The fourth recommendation is to engage with your audience. So, usually email marketing is is a great way to get in touch with your customers. It's the existing customers though. So future customers are going to see what you do on social media and your reviews, for example. So, you need to share information about your business, but relevant information. And, not only on social media, but maybe also on your GMB profile, as most people turn to this channel. Also, you need to engage with your fans and reply, to their reviews or their comments. Imagine, next week I'm going to find a restaurant somewhere in Germany on my bike tour, and I'm going to see a restaurant that got a lot of complaints, but didn't reply on those. Like, how are they going to be better for their customers? I might rather go to a different restaurant that I feel more comfortable with. The fifth recommendation is something more operational. It is to enable your teams. I assume you're not like a one-man or one human being show in your business. So you will have a marketing strategy that is more digital, and you will have colleagues that are going to collaborate with you on that. It's not only in your headquarters, but also in the regional teams. The store manager, for example. Those people, they all need to understand your strategy, and they need to understand how they can support you with that. And MarTech or marketing technology is a pretty difficult issue here. So you need to identify a tool that is easy to use for your teams, but you also need to keep in mind that you keep it simple. You don't want your your regional teams to use 3 different types of software to maybe update their business information and then do the reviews and then do the social media management. So keep it simple. Keep it simple for your teams. This is kind of very critical actually to operate on your strategy. So let's conclude. We know that COVID and digitalization, they led to a more hybrid customer journey. And we can't ignore that. We can't think of online and offline as separate categories anymore. We can tell that local engagements are still relevant. They grew by 11%. Customers are still in favor of local businesses, but also they became more digital. So they have more options at hand to engage with your business. And you need to respond to this. You need to respond to this omnichannel customer or hybrid customer. And one way to do this is to be not only present for them online, but also be convenient for them. A lot of talking here from my end. And this is kind of a summary from the report that we did, that we published last week, and you can download it via the QR code, or check out the email that Katharina is going to send out after later today, I think. If you can't wait, check out the QR code, download the asset, and I'm done here with presenting my results, and now I'm very much looking forward to the more engaging part, where we can discuss those findings. And I can have a sip of water finally.
Yeah, of course you can. So thanks so much for this presentation. I found it really interesting. Even though I already read the report, it was really great to have this data shower actually. So thanks so much for joining us today. That was really amazing. And yeah, as Philip said, we will be sending you the follow-up email with all the assets you saw here in this presentation within the next 24 hours. So don't worry if you didn't get all the data just in time. Everything will be sent to you after this presentation. And Philip, actually, what I really liked about this presentation was that you called it hybrid world. I haven't heard about that before, but I really like that term. And while I was listening to you, I was actually thinking, like, did you have something where you said, hey, that's the most interesting finding, or something I didn't expect to discover?
I mean, there were a lot of findings that I found really interesting, right? The first, when I started this research, I was mostly surprised about the increase of local interactions on GMB profiles, Google My Business profiles. To be frank, I didn't expect that, and so this is how how the whole research got deeper and deeper, because we wanted to find out what are those interactions. And this was, yeah, you can't ignore the fact that it's less driving directions in 2020. I assume it's going to be more driving directions this year again already, but in the pandemic, people turned to websites and phone calls, which is not surprising. At all, because we knew that e-commerce is, experienced this boom. However, e-commerce is being accessed by people via local search as well. So there's always some local component with a customer journey. Not always, in a lot of cases. And this is something I found quite striking. But also, realizing that made me realize, well, we here overall, we are enthusiasts about local, right? We're like, I don't know, 400, 500 people now, and we are crazy about local. We love local experiences, but we also had to admit, right? It's not exclusive. It's tied together with a digital component, because we all are not like, we don't go on the street and just go for a walk and just take what's next. We want to make sure that we get the best breakfast restaurant or the best retail store to get what we need.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also, if we look back at the audience poll we did in the beginning, you definitely see that also the audience today thinks, hey, 94%, most important, so or even more important than before. So that actually tells it all, I guess, right? Yeah. And while you were presenting us the recent findings, I was able to collect actually a couple of questions for you. So let me start with the first question I collected. So get ready. This is a bit of a longer one, but I'm sure you will be able to answer that.
Yeah, so, I'm listening closely.
All right. If Google is the most popular and important channel, wouldn't it be a waste of money and time to get present on other platforms?
Yeah. As I said, people, yes, Google is the most important channel because 77% of consumers use Google. I mean, I myself, I use Google Maps. But the thing is, people don't only go to Google, they check out many different platforms. So it would be quite a pity if like, I don't know, a handful of customers every day would check on a different directory and find contrary information there. They would lose trust. So no, it's not a waste of money. It's money well spent, actually, if you make sure that you provide consistent and accurate and correct information on all the relevant platforms that consumers use today. And again, I mean, I don't want to advertise Uber so much, right? But you know that there are tools to automate that, to, you know, not log into Google My Business and then I don't know, Facebook and then TripAdvisor and so on. You can do this like from one central platform, of course, but you need to pay for this. But you know, it's money well spent, as it will return at some point, or very not at some point, but quite early, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. Also, very recently, I wanted to go to the post office. I checked online on the Google My Business profile if this post office is open, and it stated it was open, and I went there and it was closed. So I went back with my heavy package, wasn't so happy about this experience, and I was like, okay, I'm just not going to go back to this post office next time. Instead, I search for something else. So yeah, totally agree with, again, my personal experience. Yeah, and looking at the questions, there's another one that just came in, which is also really interesting, but also pretty long. But thanks for submitting, for everyone that asked the questions to us. So the next one is, clicks for retail businesses were around 600 per month in 2020.
Yeah.
Does this mean that I should expect only as many clicks for my location, even if it's bigger in a bigger city like London?
Mm-hmm. I think this is a very interesting question. So thanks for sharing this. We could see from the industry slides that we shared here that the amount of clicks varies from industry to industry. So for example, you know, finance made like 110 interactions per month per listing, while retail was around, I don't know, 500, 600-ish. The thing is, I don't know, to be frank, I don't know how this distinguishes, you know, from a more rural area compared to a metropolitan area, like you know, London versus Brighton. Are there differences? It would be quite interesting actually to check this out, to see how, you know, how do people search locally and engage locally on their phones. 600 clicks on a retail listing, it's quite a lot actually. I mean, this is an average, right? We took an average from all the businesses that are that fulfill the criteria, which is mid-market businesses. And if you reckon 600 clicks per month are like, I don't know, I'm really bad at maths, but it's like 20 per day almost. So if you calculate against this, you know, your average basket size, for example, you might be able actually to get some direction for the return of investment that you could expect with, you know, doing your listings in the right way. But again, you know, these are averages. So depending on, you know, the visibility of your brand, the popularity, and as well, you know, the location of your brand stores, it might change. So this is something that we'd need to check out, you know, very individually. Yeah. But the data here are kind of, they give some good direction, I would say.
Very nice. And I also see you have a new research task coming up, compare London and Brighton for next time. Awesome. So there was just another question coming in, also another long question, Philip, for you. So let me read that to you. How can you get across a local message when you only have 2 physical stores on Google My Business, but offer local services in many more virtually? Does this mean you can?
Sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry, maybe there was a delay. So let me go back to that. As a very long question, but a good one. So how I start from the beginning because I think that makes sense. How can you act? No worries at all. How can you get across a local message when you only have 2 physical stores on Google My Business, but offer local services in many more virtually? This means you can set up local GMB profiles. It's a long one, right?
Yeah, I hope I understood this correctly. So the situation is you have 2 local entities as in terms of stores, but your offering is more spread around the world. So like I don't know, like a handyman, for example, who has a service area, for example. Is that, do you understand this correctly?
I think it could be. Maybe this person that just asked this question can comment on that. Otherwise, we will. Yes, yeah. Philip is correct.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. So the answer, I mean, this is a very good question actually, and it's a very interesting case because this affects I just said handyman, but also delivery services, for example, like the pizza place that wants to deliver pizza, and you can on GMB especially you can set up service areas. So the visibility of your store. Now, let me put this differently. So I search for a handyman near me, right? So I would search on my Google phone on Google, and I would search for handyman Berlin, and Google would know, okay, Philip lives here. So Google would suggest those handyman or those businesses that have the right service area that matches my location, and the proximity here is a very important criteria. So yeah, you can have two stores or two businesses, but you can set up those service areas, in the way, make it 20 miles, make it 50 miles, whatever you want, and your business will appear for consumers, accordingly. I hope I can answer this question with that, but feel free to the person who asked or raised that question, feel free to continue or to go deeper.
Yeah, thanks for asking this question. I think it was a really interesting one. Yeah. So I have another one, which is, I think, also covered in your report, if I'm not mistaken. So that is about the Primark case, I would like to call it. So this question was about, so you maybe know what I'm talking about. Primark has been all over the news that there was a massive drop of conversions to missing commerce options for consumers. Do you think brands need to have an online and offline shop at the same time to be up to date with what customers need or want?
Yeah. So Primark lost a lot of money last year as they weren't able to open their stores for some time, and they knowingly made this decision because they didn't have the operational background to really use e-commerce or to offer e-commerce. So so it might be, maybe they didn't want to do this investment because they kind of expected that the pandemic is not going to be as hard. As far as I know, they survived well enough. So they're going to continue to exist, but I expect them to rather, go for e-commerce in the future to just avoid these insecurities. And this is a very strategic decision for Primark, especially. But generally speaking, the results from the report suggest that businesses need to be more, they need to expand their channels. They need to offer e-commerce, but also their local store experience.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. And yeah, I think we're at the end of the session. So thanks for everyone that submitted a question today. Really interesting questions. Thanks so much for that. Also, a quick reminder before we close the session today, we have a short survey prepared, and we would be really happy if you can leave us some feedback after the session closed. And thanks so much for joining, taking the poll with us, and yeah, just listening to us along this session today. Thank you. And
yeah, thanks for coming.
Right. Okay, thank you, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.